This is the Environmental Protection Commission. This is a special meeting Wednesday, January 24, 2024. I thank the commission members for making time in their calendar to attend this special meeting. We have one item of business today. That's EPC 35-2023, 0 Great Island Road, lot number 1AA, aka parcel 23A, town of Darien, to construct a paved access way, walkways, drainage, walls, and other related features in regulated areas proximate to Gorham's Pond. The property lies at the east end of Goodwise River Road, across from its intersection with Rings End Road, and is identified as map number 58, lot number 1AA, aka parcel 23A. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.6125 acres. Reference is further made to filed map number 5450DLR. Rick?
Good evening. Mr. Chairman, we're here this evening to review the application 35-2023. And as you noted, it's to construct an expanded paved access way, walkways, drainage, utilities, fences, and other related features in regulated areas adjoining Gorham's Pond. I prepared a very brief agenda summary report for you to kind of summarize and to give this application some context. But the property currently supports a very narrow asphalt driveway, walls, fences, drainage, utilities, and other features. The existing driveway generally links a segment of Goodwise River Road to the cul-de-sac on Great Island Road. The resources on the property range from, and most of them are coastal resources. There are coastal flood hazard areas, shorelands, and embayment, tidal wetlands, and inland wetlands. This commission, of course, is most closely linked to the inland wetlands component and the setbacks that we have to both the inland wetlands and Gorham's Pond. A detailed soils report was done. The soils report and is reflected on a 4-part survey that has been prepared. For our purposes this evening, you'll note in your application packages that there is 1 of 4, which is the western portion of the site. Also, there's civil drawings, there's a sediment erosion control drawings, and there's a variety of statements to address the issues that are pertinent to the commission. And so the area that is most important to the EPC lies along to the western portion of the site. It lies within the 100-foot setback to Gorham's Pond. Extreme eastern portion of the site, there are also inland wetlands. However, all work associated with this expansion project, roadway expansion project, lies more than 50 feet away from the designated inland wetlands. There's also some areas of special flood hazard area, again, extreme eastern and western portions of the property, and those are outlined on the firm map and have been noted on the site surveys. So with that, the paved accessway shall be widened and upgraded to support two-way traffic, and serving the Great Island, our recent purchase, and other nearby properties. Given the scale of the work, and the resources that are on the property, the applicant, through our process, is required to demonstrate that the project will have a minimal impact on Gorham's Pond and other areas of resource. They've also looked at limiting drainage impacts, water quality impacts, ensuring consistency with the flood regulations, and embracing other opportunities to mitigate potentially adverse impacts or enhance the overall conservation values of the property in the regulated areas. To this end, the applicant has provided site development plans that are, again, in your application package. Just some of the kind of information that you call attention to is that the construction is generally limited to developed space, currently occupied by pavement, manicured uplands, and light woods. There are no direct encroachments into areas of tidal wetland, inland wetlands, an open space that's just off-site of the property, about 1,995 square feet, it's about .046 acres of the upland review area, and that's as measured to the edge of Gorham's Pond, and about 2,748 square feet of the special flood hazard are affected by the project. The impacts in the encroachments into the area of special flood hazard involve the less dynamic areas of flooding depicted as the zone AE, which is essentially ponded water, not any areas of velocity or wave action. The grade change is generally in a low to moderate range. Cuts and fills not expected to exceed 4 feet. They have provided several lengths of retaining wall to assist in the supporting of the expanded road, and about 16 of the larger trees reflected on the plan are expected to be lost as a result of the development. The project engineer should also note that he has provided correspondence confirming about drainage and water quality, pertaining to drainage and water quality, given the location relative to Long Island Sound, and it's near infinite storage. There is no requirement, nor is it's not necessary to detain stormwater where it is relative in the watershed. However, they have done things to attenuate or to address the water quality issues that we commonly see in these areas. And if you note on your plans, they have provided new drainage systems on the site. They will not be changing drainage patterns. Where there is no water quality systems on site now, what they're doing is they're going to be infiltrating the stormwater generated by the drive. So there's a series of infiltration units in 3 locations. Those will be tied to existing outfalls or discharging into the street along the gutter line of the street. And with those improvements, the applicant has confirmed that there will be no adverse impact on drainage in adjoining properties, and that it meets the water quality thresholds that all development is held to. The last thing that is, there's other things. There's what there are certain encroachments into the areas of special flood hazard area. The applicant has certified that those elements, the piers, some of the utilities, have been either elevated or are capable of withstanding the flood forces guardrails. So there are details on your plans, and there's a certification letter that confirming that they have looked at it and confirmed that it is going to meet the criteria in the flood regulations that we have interest in. An extensive plan of mitigation is proposed, and it was to offset for the tree loss, but to also provide displace some of the manicured surfaces and to enhance the conservation values of the regulated areas and property, and also areas of that the planning and zoning will have interest, areas of tidal wetland and the embankments. And so that was outlined by Matt Pop, Environmental Land Solutions, and the plan includes a variety of tree, shrubs, and ground covers that have some value. At the January 3rd meeting, we initiated the process of this review, and we accepted the application, and we had some brief comments. The commission members had some brief comments. Staff reviewed the plans and provided a series of comments that we asked the applicant to address in advance of this informational hearing on this matter. And those were outlined in a letter from staff to the applicant dated January 9th, 2024. And if you recall, A lot of that information related to verification of the flood hazard boundaries, making sure that, again, that the floodproofing, the components subject to flooding would be structurally floodproof and not subject to damage and impact. Confirmation that the project would not result in a change in the dynamics of the flood as to adversely impact abutters or causes rises that would affect butters or regulated areas or resources. There were some questions relating to the drainage structures, where they're located, where they're tying into, that the applicant has provided clarifications. They asked for you guys asked for a basic operations and maintenance plan. And finally, there was a great deal of discussion about the landscaping and the use of true natives to examine it again and to make a determination if there could be changes to have it true native plantings that are capable of survival in the locations on the property, or the conditions of the property, and in a coastal environment too. The last thing, as well as there was a question raised to the potential for using additional impervious surfaces to treat runoff. And so the applicant is here this evening. Craig Larry is here, Linda Cindy, Matt Pop is here, at Gentile, Monica Rose is here, and they're available to make their presentation and to answer your questions and further clarifications. I'm available to answer questions. I just want to make sure that all that information is on the record, and we can go from there.
Craig. Good evening. For the record, my name is Craig Flaherty. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. I'm a senior engineer and principal with Redness & Mead, a land use consulting company with offices in Stamford. On this project, we are providing land surveying, site civil engineering, and permitting services for our client, the town of Darien, represented here tonight by Selectman and Chair of the Great Island Advisory Committee, Monica McNally, the Director of Public Works, Ed Gentile, who has been overseeing the design and will oversee the construction of these improvements, and Matt Pop with Environmental Land Solutions, who provided the landscape plan and landscape architecture services. So before you on the screens, I just want to orient you to what we're talking about. The area of proposed work is, and this is just a screenshot of the Darien GIS system available online to everybody all the time. The outline in blue is where the area of proposed work is. So it's not on Great Island proper, which is evident in the lower right-hand corner of the picture. But it extends from approximately where Rings End Bridge is to what was the cul-de-sac of Great Island Road. And this is what the shape of the property looked like up until a couple of months ago, when the town purchased that cul-de-sac, indicated here. So although the tax assessor still lists it as 1.3 acres, it is in fact now 1.6 acres, effectuated by that purchase and the filed maps associated therewith. So in terms of water bodies to get familiar with on this, to the right or east of the parcel in this area is Scott Cove, which is a tidal water body connected to Long Island Sound. This is Gorham's Pond, which is a brackish water body, both tidally influenced and regulated by you all as an inland water course. There is the Gut or Darien River down here south of Rings End Road, which is a tidal water body. And then there are a variety of tidal inland and tidal wetlands around that cul-de-sac. This, of course, actually used to be an island before the causeways were put in to connect it to the mainland. So that is the orientation of the property that we're here to talk about this evening. And you can see that existing driveway that is there today. It's got a paved travel way of approximately 14 feet. And on the edges of that 14 feet, it's got depressed cobbled gutters that extend out for a total width of hardscape of about 17 feet, but those cobbled gutters aren't suitable for driving. It also happens to be slightly over the property boundary in this area on property not owned by the town of Darien. So that's part of one of the things that we're going to resolve with the application. So just to go over your regulated areas one more time, I have highlighted this property and topographic survey. In blue, I have indicated the boundary of an inland wetland that exists between the two causeways that go out to the island. And then in blue, I've dashed, but I'm going to make a thicker mark. This is your 50-foot upland review area associated with that inland wetland. In purple here is a tidal wetland. That's on the west side of the stone causeway. In purple here, that's the edge of Scott Cove, which is also the property boundary of this parcel in this area. Up at the north end of the map, we have Gorms Pond, and I've outlined the edge of Gorms Pond in blue. The 50-foot setback from Gorms Pond is here. There are no earth-disturbing activities within that 50-foot setback. The 100-foot setback to Gorms Pond is here, and we do have minor activities within that space, which include the piers and walls, a bit of the curb and new road, and some of the sidewalk and bits of the drainage system within that portion of the regulated area. On the other side of the bridge, of course, in purple again, is a tidal water body that is known as either the Darien River or, as I've known it, is the Gut. I've put in yellow on this plan also the regulatory flood boundaries. So this side of that yellow line, if you can see it, is a regulatory flood boundary, elevation 14. And that side of that yellow line is a regulatory flood boundary, elevation 14, associated with coastal floods. The property slopes from, I think it's about elevation 9 or 10, up as high as elevation 36, all the way back down to elevation 11 or 12 over there. So it's a hill. You'll see that on the proposed diagrams in a second. This is a simple Google Street View of what everybody is most familiar with of this property. This is driving over Rings End Bridge. It's what you see of the beginning of the property. If I pan this way, there's Gorms Pond, your regulated area in this location. And the important thing to point out on this exhibit is get a sense for where the property boundary is. So if you look at the column on the right side of the screen, the property boundary of property owned by the town of Darien is basically just on the right side of that column. So this portion of the gates and piers are owned by somebody else, and then from here over is owned by the town of Darien, and bits of this kind of straddle the property with the property next door. I guess this is a good way to look at it. What we have is a wonderful asset owned by the town of Darien in Great Island, but the only way to get there at the moment is this 14-foot wide paved driveway, which also is not entirely on our property. So we are proposing to move it onto our property and to widen it to support two-way traffic. And we've narrowed it down to, I think, the level we're comfortable with to just make sure we're not paving things we don't need to pave. And the proposal is 22 feet wide. For reference, 22 feet wide, a typical brand new subdivision road in the town of Darien would be about 26 feet wide. So it's a little bit narrower than that. And 22 feet wide is about the width of the paved driveways at Waveney. So they're at 22 feet wide. And that's really the minimum necessary to create safe two-way traffic. And that's what we're trying to do here, is just create safe two-way traffic so that when that is there, the town can open up public access to this wonderful new open space asset. In addition to the driveway, we're proposing a new walkway as well. There is already a walkway on Rings End Road, on the west side of Rings End Road, all the way from Post Road all the way down and over the bridge, and it actually ends here. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take a sidewalk right down the west side of this new driveway, 5 feet wide, to get to respect that we have to design things not only for vehicles these days, right? We got to design for pedestrians and vehicles, for rollers and strollers, for bikes, and et cetera. So this is the proposed roadway plan, which shows, again, all your regulated areas. Here's that 50-foot setback to Gorham's Pond. Here's that 100-foot setback to Gorham's Pond. There's the flood zones. And this is the 22-foot driveway, positioned farther east than it is today. And on the west side, or bottom side as you're looking at this, is the 5-foot sidewalk that is proposed to get folks from here to here. That sidewalk's set off the edge of pavement, so there's a couple of feet of buffer, which is also a nice feature. But basically we're working with all of these minimum dimensions. Unfortunately, there are 16 trees along this route that need to be removed to facilitate this. Matt will get into how many trees we're planting and the types of trees we're planting. But what this does create is an increase in impervious surface, right? And if we're not careful, right, the rain falling on that additional impervious surface can run off into waterways and have negative impacts. So we make sure we're careful. We should point out that the front side of the driveway drains down to Pear Tree Point Road, this intersection here, and ultimately is tributary to a catch basin in Pear Tree Point Road. And the outfall for that catch basin is directly across the street into the Darien River of the Gut. So the stormwater runoff from this portion is not going to your regulated area, it is going to a tidal water body. Similarly, you see this bowl in the middle. So stormwater from that is collected near the bottom, approximated with my finger, there we go. And there are a couple of aged catch basins and an aged pipe coming out of that, pointing towards Scott Cove, this little inlet right here. So that is where the water in this portion of the driveway ends up. And then the end of the driveway, coming down this way towards the cul-de-sac, is the third route. The outfall there is, again, over here. It does not outfall into the inland wetland. It outfalls into the tidal wetland to the south. So by happenstance, all of the water that flows off the site today or will flow off the site tomorrow doesn't actually go to an inland wetland or water body under your jurisdiction. It goes to a tidal wetland or water body. That doesn't matter to us. It's just a jurisdictional question. What we did is we looked at the increase in impervious coverage, and we made sure we were offsetting the impact associated with that increase in impervious coverage. And we did it by retrofitting the drainage system, basically not even retrofitting the drainage system, and we were providing almost an entirely new drainage system on the site to mitigate the potential effects of that increase in impervious coverage. So this is our utility plan, and I've highlighted in blue on this utility plan the components of the proposed stormwater system. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 brand new catch basins and 1 slightly shifted catch basins. And all these catch basins will have deep sumps to provide that initial treatment to get sediment and organics and debris and floatables captured in the catch basin. And in each scenario, whether it's the 2 new catch basins at the front, the 2 catch basins in the middle, or the catch basin at the end, there is going to be installed a new infiltration system associated with that collection device. And so we're proposing an infiltration system here, an infiltration system here, and an infiltration system there. And infiltration systems are designed to retain a certain amount of water called water quality volume and give that water an opportunity to soak into the ground so that there is groundwater recharge, there is runoff reduction, and ultimately as that soaks through the earth, it is filtered and cooled before finding eventually its way out to the sinks in the nearby water bodies. If we get a significant storm event, right, that will fill up and water will cascade over and flow out as it does today. But providing this much retention captures a significant amount of the overall volume of water that falls in a given year. And that's how these standards are created and complied with. Yeah, it's worth noting. So this infiltration system, its overflow is a small area drain, which will then be captured by this catch basin and flow out here. This overflow is a pipe out to a manhole where we're trying to connect back into an existing 8-inch tile pipe. We're going to hopefully clean that and repair it. If for whatever reason we can't clean and repair it, we've presented an alternate option, which is to just overflow it to a level spreader in the shoulder of the road over here. And then this one will overflow again out in that direction. Thank you, sir. Because this road is moving over and widening, right, it starts to infringe upon some of the sloped areas on the west side of on the east side of the site, sorry. And we didn't want to disturb any farther than we needed to. So we're proposing 3 retaining walls. I'll just highlight them so you can kind of see them better. Sorry, it's all blue. There is a retaining wall here. That wall, you will be able to see the face of this way. It is higher here and lower there, so you will see the face of the retaining wall here. It slopes maybe from 0 feet to 5 feet to 0 feet. There is a second and third retaining wall that do the opposite. Those retaining walls, this is the high side and this is the low side. So the face of the wall that you would observe is over here. And there'll be either a stone parapet on those walls or a guide rail, wooden guide rail, to protect any vehicles potentially departing the roadway surface from the lower side of those walls. So back really to ultimately your area of primary jurisdiction, which is the end of the road here. It's probably best indicated on Matt's plan. This is kind of the stuff. So there's this pier is existing and stays in its place as it is today. The next 3 piers you see are, I'm not going to say new piers, they're relocated piers. We're going to salvage everything that we can out of the existing stonework and the existing iron gates and fences and reconfigure the gate, because the gate right now is at 17 feet, but it needs to make room for the sidewalk and it needs to make room for the road, so it has to be much wider. So we leave this pier alone. We add a smaller intermediate pier on each side of the driveway. That was actually something that came out of ARB comments, and we improved the design through our conversation with ARB. They liked going back to here, the kind of secret garden effect of the narrow gates, inviting you into something special. And so we were able to recreate that with these 2 intermediate piers at the edge of the driveway, and then a new large pier to mirror and be symmetrical with the large pier on the other side, not new, again, moved. So, bits of that work is within your jurisdiction. Certainly this edge of the road isn't within your jurisdiction. This bit of the sidewalk is within your jurisdiction, and then the stormwater improvements at this edge. But again, there's really, I can't create a way for any of this work to impact inland wetlands and watercourses just by virtue of the fact that water flows downhill and it's not flowing to those regulated areas. We do have a sediment erosion control plan that's within the set, and it will be dynamic because the road will kind of be built in 2 stages, because we want to leave the existing road in operation while we're building it. So largely, the work that needs to happen on the east side of this will happen first. So the widening will occur, and then the traffic will be moved there, and then the work on the other side will be done. So it'll be a little bit dynamic, but the basis of the sediment erosion control plan has been provided. Maybe with that, I'll have Matt kind of walk you through the planting plans and some of the revisions he's made based on comments received, and then I'll come back up and
Craig, if you could quickly look at the elevation of the pillars.
surely.
Right there.
I'll stay here in case you need me to press anything else.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist, environmental land solutions. I prepared the landscaping plan before you, and maybe I'll just highlight again the work that's done within the setback of the Gorham's Pond. We're just going to start maybe with the elevation instead of on this, which I think difficult to see. But the property line is right about here, so the town owns from here over, and then from here this way is private. So this pillar stays. Then there's the sidewalk. And one of these pillars gets relocated here, so we have the bigger pillar, the smaller pillar. Then we have the road. Then we have the smaller pillar. Then we have a section of gate, and then we have the bigger pillar here, so it's symmetrical. So we have 2 big pillars, 2 smaller pillars, the sidewalk here, and the gate there.
Excuse me, Matt. Both you and Craig have said that essentially the right-hand side of the pillar is owned privately. Are you aware of, or has that private owner expressed an opinion whether he's going to replace that, or he or she would like to keep that?
The town has had meetings with all abutting property owners, both the folks to the east and the west. And at this point, we're presenting an application entirely within the town's control. If something changes in the future, then it'll change in the future.
So you have no knowledge of, because
Correct, no
in
knowledge
theory,
of
it's on
any
it's on his or her property.
Yeah.
That individual
We don't expect.
could wake up one morning and say, gone, and
There's been nothing that we have heard or witnessed or seen that would suggest they're doing anything with that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So again, the vegetation on the pillars gets removed, so you could actually see the pillars. They're probably like 8 feet high or so. As Craig noted, there's 16 trees being removed. Most of those are pretty mature Norway spruce trees. They are all, you can probably see them.
A couple there.
Yeah, they're all on the left side of the driveway, which is kind of the northeast side. So again, 16 trees being removed. And then we have a lot of additional deciduous trees and evergreen trees. So again, all of the plantings are kind of on the top of the sheet, on the northeast of the road. These, for the bottom of the sheet, those are privately owned parcels, so we're not sure exactly what they're going to be doing in the future. So again, all of our plantings are on the top side. That's where our property is. There's the sidewalk is here, so the sidewalk's pretty close to the property line, so there's really no room for trees on the south side of that proposed road. Some of the changes, actually, we have, Craig came up with the numbers, and we're proposing, 28 new trees and 27 additional green giant arborvitaes. If you count those, it's about 55, 56 trees we're proposing. Some of the comments that we got were the oak trees that were originally proposed, if they could be moved further from the road or maybe changed, because they didn't want the acorns falling on the road for bikers. A or B actually wanted fewer trees. They kind of wanted to be more open and keep the same character. So we removed, maybe about 8 or 10 trees, like the tupelo tree went down, 3 trees. The birch trees I had were removed. The shads I had were removed. I had 1 sweet gum that was removed. But they did want a larger growing London plane tree because they thought that was kind of keeping with the character of the island. So those changes were made. You'll note that most of the evergreens that we're proposing are kind of back through here. We wanted to screen headlights from cars coming this way from hitting this house, so a lot of the evergreens are back through here. I used, again, Norway spruce, Serbian spruce. Those two, they're not native. Green giants I used also. Those aren't native either. The deer don't eat them, which is great. We do use native American holly. It's difficult to buy. You really can't buy them, probably bigger than 6 or 7 feet in size. The price goes up greatly, and they're tough to find. Near the entrance of the site over here, trying to find, we used one more plant that wasn't native, a cherry laurel. The house here has views, it's up high, it has views over this drive to the gut, to down to the coastal areas down here. So we're trying to keep a plant that screens the driveway, but maintains the views from the house to the sound. So that was something about maybe 15 feet in height that we were trying to keep. So that's why we used that plant. Now, if we wanted to switch that plant out, we could probably use like a bayberry. It's a semi-evergreen, probably goes to 10 or 12 feet in height, right there. Lighting for the site, we're still kind of, not pinned down on it, but there's probably going to be like 4 or 5 light poles. Going to be probably like 8 feet in height, small residential scale, downward pointing, warm tone. The pillars here probably have just 2 uplights just onto the pillars themselves. So the lighting, so again, it'll be probably a light in this area here, 1 here at the high point, 1 at the radius, and 1 down here near the end. So very, very low level lighting on the site. Craig noted about the walls that were proposed, just the 3 of them on the northern side, northeastern side of the drive. Let's see. I think that's probably the highlights of the landscaping plan. Yep.
I guess that really is enough of a presentation. I think you got a really good sense of the detail of the project and the thought that went into it, and we're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, great presentation. Bill?
I commend the installation of the infiltrations, 3 of them. It's above and beyond, and maybe this will set an example for some other applicants. And I wasn't sure where the outflows were, but now you've handled that for me, so that's all I have.
Great, thank you.
A couple of questions. So one of our standards of review is, are there any feasible and prudent alternatives? So could you articulate the hardships or safety issues that might involve not passing this? In other words, one of the alternatives of prudent might be to do nothing. How would that impact the applicant, the town, the public?
Yeah, as you know, I sat on this board for 7 years. I'm familiar with wetland regulation and law, and the reality is that the alternative test does not really come into necessity unless you are creating an impact to a wetland. Mm-hmm. And what we are positing is that we have no impacts to inland wetlands or watercourses. We did consider a few, again, we started at a 24-foot wide. I started a 24-foot wide drive. We narrowed it down to 22 feet. That was an alternative that we considered. We decided we could have slightly less impact on the site in general.
The walls.
Yeah, the walls help us. When we started to grade the site out towards the property boundaries, we said, we're kind of disturbing more area than we need to. Let's put the walls in, narrow that area of disturbance. Instead of this infiltration system here, we looked at maybe just having the catch basins function as their own dry wells. There wasn't quite enough room to make that happen, and I think this setup is a little bit elevated anyway because you want the basic pre-treatment of the catch basin sump in the hood, before you get to the infiltration system, and you wouldn't get that if you had a direct dry well. So we make a lot of these mini judgments and considerations as we're doing a design, knowing that we have to go before ARB and EPC and P&Z and the public in general, and really trying to find a plan that we know we can defend because it does not impact inland wetlands or waterways.
And you're saying it doesn't impact the wetlands because it's minimal and through the infiltrators and otherwise you've ameliorated the...
Yeah, well, I mean, under existing conditions and proposed conditions, not one drop of water will get to an inland wetland or watercourse.
Great. The stone bridge, is that in our regulated area?
Rings End Bridge?
No, along the pathway here.
Stone-
Isn't there
Oh, this one over here.
Yep.
Yes, right in. So this is the earth causeway between the alley of declining sugar maples. This is the stone causeway. And right in between those two areas is an inland wetland. And it's interesting, it probably at one point was a tidal wetland. That area again was filled, but because not just this causeway was built and this causeway was built, it closed that area off from being tidally influenced. That's the nature of that wetland right there.
So for the stone causeway, has there been any engineering aspect to that in terms of gross vehicle weight? Will otherwise heavy equipment or large buses be allowed to?
Nothing in particular in terms of a geotechnical analysis has been done. My assessment is that it's built on large rocks and it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
But we haven't done a geotechnical analysis of that.
And then, is there a standard for the width? Because Waveney is a good example, because sometimes that's a little bit on the narrow side.
Yes.
You got to really
Yeah.
watch yourself kind of dodging traffic.
I think we were comfortable with that here. The hope is that it will lower speeds. The narrowness
Right.
will help lower speeds, so that there's a traffic calming component to it.
So is it true that there's no minimum standard, state standard for town road widths, or is this not considered a town road?
Well, this is not a street
Yeah.
in the way that our streets are streets. This is a driveway on a piece of property, like Cherry Lawn might be,
Yeah.
or McGuan Field might be. It's just a driveway on a piece of property. So you are in the zoning regs, that would be the nearest place that has a standard. When you have a parking aisle that you have to back into, the standard is 24 feet, but a two-way service drive into a site plan necessitating that level of service drive is 22 feet.
Thank you.
Jim?
I think you've answered the question that I had, Greg, which is, I'm sure, addressed in all of your very good work here. I echo what Mr. Wright suggested. I commend everything have done to date. Emergency vehicles, fire trucks and other emergency vehicles, the width, everything is fine, I presume.
Yeah, no, this.
That's a question.
100%. This is a relatively straight road. It's fine for emergency vehicles and any other construction vehicles or, minibuses or whatever, anything that needed to get out to the island. It's fine.
Thank you. Your presentation is so easy to follow. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I echo that. Are you done?
I'm done, thank you.
I just would like to address the planting plan, if possible. Matt, you had mentioned that at the recommendation of ARB that you removed some of the trees from the plan. And
Yes.
I know that you had varying sizes of trees. There were some rather large trees and medium-sized trees, and there were shrubs and there were ground covers. Could you just address what was removed from the plan?
Okay, generally, I have just a list. There was the black gums.
But I mean, did they, just in terms of scale, did they tend to be the larger trees?
No, they just wanted fewer of them. They
Of the-
wanted fewer trees
Okay.
overall. It was that they kind of made a point at the end, kidding around, said this is probably the first job that came before them, project before them, where they said they wanted less landscaping.
Absolutely.
Right.
And by the way, I think there's two reasons for that. One, Matt prepared a very fulsome planting plan.
Right, yeah.
But two, if you have driven that road, there is a beauty in the simplicity of it.
Right.
The farm feel.
Right.
Not this overplanted nursery cut.
Right. No, I mean, that was like kind of the sense that I got from the original plan, is that it was almost like a wall of
Yeah, it was,
shrubbery and trees.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a magnificent piece of property, and I mean, I feel like I'm trying to imagine like what would have existed there, when, I mean, because of the old buildings and everything, what exists, and the naturalness of it, what existed there in, prior times. And that's why that brings me back to, you mentioned some of the choices of the plants and the trees, and I'm wondering if there's any way that natives could be substituted for some of those as opposed to the non-natives?
I would say like the skip laurel, we could, again, like I said, put in a bayberry, again, that's semi-evergreen. You don't get the full evergreen effect during the winter time. The evergreen trees, nothing is probably going to grow as maybe as big as a spruce. I have two spruces. Red, you could use red cedar, but you don't get, I think, the same effect. Right now, the main trees we're taking down, most of those 16, or maybe all of the 16, are spruce trees.
Right, yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's also important to consider, as Matt was describing a little bit, the purpose of different elements of the planting plan. So some elements are for recognizing the coastal ecological value of the property.
Right.
But some elements are, in direct response to the fact that
The screening,
we have two
right.
neighbors,
I
right? And
understand.
we want to be a good neighbor to those two
Right.
neighbors. We've met with them. We kind of worked out details of the planting plan with them. And so we're trying to kind of have a foot on each side.
Right. I guess I just feel that whenever possible, if natives can be used, I think, especially given that this is municipal property, I think it's a good idea to try to do that. I think it sets a good example for residents and so forth.
So yeah, typically, I probably wouldn't use like the London plane tree.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, so you can make the reverse recommendation.
To P&Z if you want to give
Yes.
Okay.
So, I would be.
You do that, it's, honestly, I think what you're doing is great,
Yeah.
but your conversation is really out of our jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's.
And
I mean,
so, I think it's wonderful to have.
Yep.
And I can invite you to go to planning and zoning, who does have direct jurisdiction over this, and talk to them, because, I'm sure they'll appreciate
If-
your depth of thought on this.
If the consensus of the group is there and you felt strongly enough, you have the option of providing comments as the Conservation Commission.
And the problem will be, to the right side, we have no control over
Yes.
what
Yeah.
the new owners of that property will be.
Right.
So you'll have to just keep looking to the left as you drive without hitting it.
Right.
I'm sure that
So I think, again, in the near term, I think not much is going to change, is my guess, based on the conversations that I've heard or had.
Okay.
And there is likely to be a simple array of trees added on that right side.
I had a question on that. I just wanted to say it now while we're talking about it. So, it may be a totally crazy thought, but you're talking about the symmetry of the entranceway. Wouldn't it be great to get a little bit of symmetry as you kind of, go down the road and have some trees on the other side? Would we, since we've taken trees away from the plan, would we ever even consider, working with those folks?
Again, we are
offer-
presenting an application that is entirely within the town's control, and that's the best option for the town right now. And if conversations occur at a later date and things change, we're open and willing to have this conversation.
Okay, it seems like it could be a win-win.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tough to make the neighbor part of the application.
Got it.
And then the new trees that are going in, it would, it said on the planting plan, you're going to have some way to protect them. Will that be like the caged fences, like the trees that are on Town Hall and Cherry Lawn, or what measures
Protect them
would
from
you?
deer.
From the deer rubbing, right?
I probably would think that it might be, each one might get a small fence around them. I think that.
Until they're established?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we should get a couple of border collies.
Have them go free, right? Yeah. So that, I mean,
No.
right, I mean, it is outside of our jurisdiction, but because, the
You know,
tree.
look, we recognize there's a lot of interest in this application. We're happy, while Channel 79 is on, to kind of facilitate these conversations so everyone understands the
Right.
detail.
Well, the plants and the trees, as this commission knows, that's always my sticking point. So, thank you. That's really all that I have.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you again for explaining this. It makes sense that you were on the commission as well. You did a great job. So I had the question about the, possible more porous or pervious surface area. So I think that the answer to that was because it's too sloped,
Yes.
mostly.
Yeah, it's a combination of potential frequency of use and slope. So this section of the road is 8%. And porous surfaces, whether it's porous asphalt or it's permeable pavers, have less tensile strength than conventional materials. So they pull apart really easily. So if with the additional torque on a tire going up a hill or just over time laying on a slope can tend to separate those. So we try not to recommend them when we get up over 5%. The other conversation we had with ARB was, of course, about the sidewalk. The proposed surface material for that is blacktop, which is, again, the surface material on the sidewalk all along Rings End Road. And they were wondering if there could be a more natural material, but we tried that once. It's because of the 8% slope. If you did anything that wasn't bound together, it would migrate. It would be a pain to maintain, and we do have to respect the fact that this is a public property, and we have to have it suitable, again, for not only foot traffic, but wheel traffic. We tried some chip stone dust options at Highland Farm when we initially put the walking path in there, because that's all under 5%. I think we installed 50 or 100 feet of a stone chip version to see if it was wheelchair compatible. It was not. And I think, where possible, we should provide boundless opportunity. So it's just kind of it's a factor of where we are, right? We have to consider these things now. It's going to be a public property. It's 2024, and it just needs to be flat and hard and maintainable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I just had two thoughts on what's probably out of our jurisdiction, but I wanted to mention it. You said that you were going to be reusing some materials, some of the
Oh, yeah.
stone.
Oh, I didn't mention that. So we can talk about this. So there is this granite block curb. So all the materials associated with the piers and anything we can maintain, reusable there. But there's a block curb on either side of the road. We're going to salvage that stone, and that will be the curb on the new driveway. So we're salvaging all of that. And then there's been a lot of conversation and not yet a resolution about how to incorporate some sort of homage or accent to these unique cobblestone gutters on either side of the road. So for now, we're indicating that the cobblestones will be salvaged and placed somewhere on the island for an opportunity to be reused. And we are still trying to think about what that might be and how to do that.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, and I think it could be a kind of a cool sustainability waste avoidance project
absolutely.
for the town as well.
ARB also commented on the spruce trees, whether or not we could harvest them. And so that's also up for discussion. But we have to get through contracting and find the guy that's going to remove the trees, and et cetera, et cetera. But that's a thought that's been put out there that we're thinking about.
Great. Yeah. The other question I had was about the lighting, and it occurred to me, since it's like a low level lighting, have we considered anything like solar lighting or anything? Because again, it could be a cool sustainability project if you do a
we have not considered that
analysis.
I
mean, I don't know if it would work or not. If it's really
I don't know. I can't comment on position and where trees are and exposure and how it might function. But we have not considered that.
So usually the solar lighting, it seems like it's a cool light, where I think that we want the warm light, the warm tones. So I'm not sure if that's an option with that. So it would be. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it? Any other commission member?
No, sir.
All right. Greg, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Matt, thank you very much. Ed, thank you very much for coming. Monica, of course. You want to, I guess, the next steps?
Any members of the public?
Pardon?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a public hearing. Is there, I see two people from the public here. Any comments or anything like that? You want to come up and, I usually don't do that, but, so, okay. Thank you for coming and, so, next steps?
We draft a resolution for your consideration.
And which we'll see in our Tuesday, excuse me, our
February
February
7th.
meeting. February 7th?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see on February 7th. Okay, so there's no other business? Meeting to adjourn, motion?
I make a motion to adjourn the special meeting of tonight, January 24th, 2024, of the Environmental Protection Commission.
And second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Channel 79.